My name is Mayoral, and I am on the board of the Yes We Can Democratic Club. And before we begin, I would like to allow Reverend Elena Larson, who is the senior minister of this beautiful, historic First Congregational Church, to say a few words.
Good evening. Are we here? Good evening.
Good evening.
And I am the new senior minister of the First Congregational Church of Christ, the Church of Long Beach United Church of Christ. I've been here since August and was formally installed just last month. So it is my special pleasure to be able to welcome you and to say that this is such a wonderful affirmation of what it means to be a community on the corner of arts and justice. So we're deeply glad to be here tonight with all of you to support civic engagement as a good for the community. And you are all welcome back at any time, but please know that it's truly a celebration of community to have you here tonight, and we are very glad. So thank you all.
So I'd like to give you an official welcome to the 2014 Yes We Can Democratic Club Mayoral Debate of Long Beach. And thank you all for attending this evening, even though the weather has been challenging per se. But of course we know that we need it, so nobody's complaining that I've heard. A main mission of the Yes We Can Democratic Club is to inform voters, to register voters, and to encourage all citizens to go to the polls and vote. And it was in this spirit that about last September, we all got together and decided that we wanted to try to put together a community mayoral debate to be able to give citizens a chance to hear from the candidates. So you will have a chance tonight to hear firsthand from these 5 candidates who are here. And we hope that you'll pay attention to their credentials, to their vision for Long Beach, as well as their management style, and that will give you information that you need to be able to go to the polls and vote in the primary election on April 8th. As you probably remember, Californians have voted for a top 2 tier, so the top 2 people from the primary will then compete against one another in an election on June 3rd. Before we officially begin, I just want to take a moment, I hope you'll not mind, that I just read you some general information about some housekeeping items, some general information that pertain to the well-being of everyone and the safety of everyone here. First of all, and I know you're going to know what the first one's going to be, and that is we request that you turn off your cell phones. Can you check them now, please? And make sure they're in the off position. Also, because this church, now we've learned, is 126 years old and it is a major historic place, there is no eating or beverages within the sanctuary area. If you need to use the restroom, you would go out back into the foyer and to the left into a large anteroom and follow the signs. Get to have a chance, in case you do have to go, it's wonderful because you get to see more of this beautiful church. And finally, we just wanted to remind you that if you are parked in the city parking garage across the street, that the facility does close at 10:30.
Thank you, Laura. Good evening, everybody. My name is Christopher Duvali. I am the treasurer of the Yes We Can Democratic Club. I wear 2 hats, sorry. I'd like to tell you a little bit about our club. Our club is a local organization chartered with the Los Angeles Democratic Party. But for the first time in history, we took off that partisan hat. It was very difficult to host this mayoral debate. It is in line with our club's purpose of informing the community of civic, state, and federal policies. We actually have a very wide presence about the community. We actually table at the farmers markets where we register voters, and in the past few years, we actually registered over 1,800 voters in Long Beach and throughout the area of all party affiliations. But we will, yes we will continue continue our presence out there. Lately, we've actually been informing people and directing them to the Covered California webpage, where now every California citizen can actually get health care, which is another wonderful thing. We will continue our presence in the community, supporting any action that promotes social justice, equality, opportunity, and service. And I would like to thank the candidates this time, as well as the First Congregational Church. I keep wanting to say congressional, you know? Come on, separation church and state. Here we are, no debate. Even though they were hospitable in allowing us to use this beautiful venue, there was a cost incurred, and we did receive some contributions from sponsors, which are in your program. So please do take a look at them and note that they're very gracious. And also, with all of you attending the debate right now, we would appreciate any contributions. And you can make your checks out to the Yes We Can Democratic Club or YWCDC. And our ushers at the end of the event will be holding cans where you can drop in the checks. And just like anywhere else, cash is very welcome as well. Thank you.
It is now my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Dave Willinga. We feel very, very lucky to have been able to have found Dave because he's not a member of our club. We were able to find him through recommendations from civic groups and individuals and other groups. And again, we feel very lucky. A more complete biography is printed in your program, but I'd like to give you just a few highlights so you know who the moderator is. Dave is an award-winning journalist, and he is currently the founder, editor, and publisher of an online magazine called GreaterLongBeach.com. He's a Long Beach native. He actually has been a journalist since 1972, which is hard to believe. Dave worked for 23 of those years at the Press-Telegram, and during that time he had a very wide range of stories and topics to cover, and as a result it allowed him to become very well versed in the issues that concern the people in the city of Long Beach. One of the things that we were very pleased about in terms of his qualifications. And in addition, Dave has written numerous articles for publications and newspapers that are well beyond the Long Beach area, regionally as well as nationally. So we are convinced that we really scored a coup in being able to get this fine person to be the moderator of this debate. So without further ado, we'd like to present Dave Willinga.
I have a little bit of a voice problem tonight with the cold, so bear with me on that front. Thank you for the nice introduction. As I said, I'm not a member of the Yes We Can Democratic Club, but when I was offered this great honor, really it was because I saw the determination of the membership to have an event that really was not partisan. And in any situation like that, there's some friction, and so when I saw the friction, I knew it was a good deal. So. Let's see, the format for this debate was suggested by Dr. Craig Smith of the Center for First Amendment Studies at Cal State Long Beach. Dr. Smith was a speechwriter for President, I always get them two mixed up, but it's George H.W. Bush and President Gerald Ford, and he had extensive experience in national debates, nationally televised debates, so at least we're heading in the right direction tonight, I think. Rather than opening statements, each candidate provided a brief biography that I'm going to read, just kind of a short rundown on who they are and what they've done. So let's introduce the candidates. First, we have Dr. Robert Garcia, the Vice Mayor of Long Beach and a member of the California Coastal Commission. He teaches in the Public Policy and Communications School at USC and has taught Communication Studies at CSULB and Long Beach City College. Robert's passion for education led him to pursue a doctorate in higher education. Robert co-founded the Long Beach Post, a Long Beach-based media website and newspaper. The small business has grown into an important source for community information and has more than 40,000 online subscribers. Dr. Garcia serves as the chair of the Long Beach Public Safety Committee and the Long Beach Housing Authority. He was born in Lima, Peru, and immigrated to the United States at age 5 with his family. He was raised by 3 strong women in his life, his mother, grandmother, and aunt. While at Long Beach State, Robert was elected student body president. Dr. Robert Garcia. Next we have Assemblywoman Bonnie Lowenthal, a resident of Long Beach for more than 40 years. Bonnie raised her family here and has worked to improve our schools, make neighborhoods safer, and make our city work better and more efficiently. Bonnie has served Long Beach as a school board member, city council member, nonprofit director, and currently our assembly member. Bonnie led efforts to reform our schools and help make Long Beach one of the best urban school districts in the nation. On the city council, she fought to hire more police, crack down on gangs, and reduce firefighter and police response times. In the legislature, she's an advocate for our city, helping create thousands of new jobs in Long Beach and redirecting millions of our tax dollars back to our schools and public safety. Mr. Delgado, who, believe it or not, I just met after all these years. He grew up in Long Beach as well. He attended Long Beach City College and Stanford University. He also studied at Union Theological Seminary and Columbia University. He later earned a law degree at the University of Chicago. Doug helped found the city's historic preservation organizations. He then chaired the city's Blue Ribbon Citizens Transportation Task Force, the Long Beach City Planning Commission for 2 terms, the city manager's Downtown Business and Development Advisory Committee for 6 years, and the Long Beach Strategic Plan 2010. Most recently, Doug served on the city's Ethics Task Force and is currently serving his 3rd term as an elected trustee of Long Beach City College. He's also a charter member of the Board of Directors of the Aquarium of the Pacific, a successful small business owner, and was a full adjunct professor of law at Southwestern University of Law for 16 years. Councilwoman Jerry Shipsky is a Long Beach native as well, an attorney, nurse practitioner, and college instructor, and has served the city of Long Beach since her late 20s. She was the city's first public information officer, then served 6 years as vice chair of the Queensway Bay Planning Committee that helped develop the Aquarium of the Pacific. For over 12 years, she served on and led the Board of Health and Human Services. Jerry spearheaded the formation of the Long Beach Chief of Police Women's Advisory Committee and the Sexual Assault Response Team. She was elected to the Long Beach Community College District Board of Trustees in 1992, first openly gay elected public official in Long Beach. She focused on expanding vocational training programs and implementing a seamless educational system with Long Beach State and, with the Long Beach Unified School District and Long Beach State. Jerry was elected to the Long Beach City Council in 2006 and re-elected in 2010. She teaches graduate and undergraduate courses at Long Beach State on public administration, intergovernmental relations, personnel management, and California government. Councilmember Jerry Shipsky. Good evening as well to Jonna Shields, who's been an active Long Beach community participant since 1980. She says she values relationships over self-seeking and is a seasoned communicator. A person of integrity, she accepts every person with dignity, treats them with respect, and lets them define who they are. As CEO of a nonprofit located in the Drake Park neighborhood, she has a lifestyle of giving back to the community at the grassroots level. Friend's House at Drake Park gives low-income kids a hand up out of poverty to pursue a productive lifestyle. Jonna has 3 college degrees in 3 different fields, including an MA from Long Beach State in linguistics. She speaks 3 languages fluently and is a published linguist. Ms. Jonna Shields. Well, why don't we just get one, so I can take a drink, one big round of applause for the about no liquids in the sanctuary. Well, now we'll get right to the ground rules. The candidates previously received these rules, but we're going to quickly go over them for a refresher and for your benefit. The debate is going to be conducted under the jurisdiction of the moderator and the timekeeper, who is Carol Roberts, sitting right here. I'm going to present the questions to the candidates and monitor their adherence to the rules. The timekeeper will monitor the 1 minute and 2 minute increments allotted to the candidates for their various responses. Our decisions are final and beyond appeal. As previously mentioned, the candidates, well, I don't know if we did mention that they have drawn lots to determine the order in which they'll receive the questions. The order is going to shift during the debate. So the first person will answer the first question, and then the second person will answer the next round of questions first. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. The candidate who receives a question first will have 2 minutes to respond. And when that candidate has either finished the 2 minutes or has just finished speaking, the follow-up candidates will each have 1 minute to comment either on the question, but also to address the response of the first candidate. So we're going to draw, I think, some delineation between their positions, or maybe let them draw it if there are differences. The follow-up candidates, they do have two options. They can answer the question itself, or they can include their commentary on the first candidate's answer. But I believe it's also good to just advise everybody that we're also here to hear your position as well, so please include that. And on that note, I have some advisories. One is that all candidates must use their time to answer the question that is on the floor. If they attempt to avoid the question or introduce a new topic, I'll just nudge people back on topic. The second advisory is that if one candidate mentions another candidate by name and either grossly distorts the record, is attacking in some kind of way, that candidate can request another minute from me to rebut what it was said or correct the information, and I'll make that judgment depending on, I guess, just on what whim I feel at the time. No, but on the basis of its legitimacy. And during the rebuttal, we also have to stay on topic. The idea is that if something contrary to the truth or attacking is presented, that you'll have an opportunity to correct it. So finally, I think we're just about ready. Okay. The timekeeper is going to notify me when 10 minutes remain in the debate, and whatever round of questioning has begun will be completed. And then at the end of that round, each candidate will be allowed 1 minute to summarize. After those summaries, the debate is concluded. So, everybody ready? I'll start first with Councilwoman Jerry Shipsky. And I have a short little backstory for context. One of the most troublesome every election issues in Long Beach is the failure of elected public officials to find and agree upon and execute a policy for repairing our diminishing infrastructure. During his first term, Mayor Bob Foster came up with a plan that almost everyone agreed with. Measure I, a $551 million parcel tax that he promised would be spent only on infrastructure. But to be implemented, the city charter required Long Beach voters to approve Measure I by a 2/3 majority, unless the city council unanimously declared the situation constituted a state of emergency. Then voters would only need to approve the measure by a simple majority to take effect. 8 of 9 city council members approved the declaration of a state of emergency. Jerry Shipsky did not. Months later, the people of Long Beach went to the polls, approved Measure I by a 52% margin, but falling short of the 2/3, it did not pass. Because of this dissent, Long Beach's infrastructure was not addressed then, and it's in its current state now. So the question is, Councilmember Shipsky, to please explain why you didn't vote for the state of emergency that would have enabled Measure I's passage. And knowing the consequences, would you vote the same way now? Does the current situation constitute a state of emergency? And as Mayor of Long Beach, how would you address this issue?
Like many things that have occurred before the city council, this was one of those issues that was my own way through. And what they were requesting us to do is to vote on declaring an emergency. That is the only way that you, in fact, could then allow this kind of parcel tax to go, which is a property tax, by the way, on every single person in this room. There were a lot of defects in it. One, first of all, there wasn't an emergency. And the other difficulty with this particular parcel tax is that it was not specified in the list of the projects that were to be funded by your parcel tax, which, by the way, also didn't have a sunset provision. So it could go on forever and ever and ever. What they did at the end is they listed streets, sidewalks, curbs, all the things that we need to get fixed. And by the way, my district has the most streets, the most curbs, the most sidewalks. And so this would have had a big impact. But what was stuck at the end was wetlands. And it was because a real estate transaction was in the making behind the scenes to pay Tom Dean almost $22 million. And that is what I objected to. This was not fully disclosed, it wasn't open, it was not transparent. Subsequent to that, as the economy has recovered and oil monies, which are surplus and not tax money, we have poured an incredible amount of money back into infrastructure, and we are repairing infrastructure. I have a great program in the 5th Council District that's been taken citywide. We do saw cutting and has saved 30%, according to Public Works, across the city in the repair of sidewalks. We have a number of other programs that we brought in. We group repairs together that has also saved money. And so I would say that there was another way to do it. The voters spoke out. They didn't get the 2/3 necessary. And honestly, I publicly paid for it with the mayor taking revenge.
Mr. Otto, would you like to respond both to Jerry's comments and to how you would handle the problem of Long Beach's infrastructure?
Sure. You know, what a mayor does is provide leadership. And a mayor has to bring people together, to arrive at a consensus about how to move forward in the city. And I think what happened in that instance was that the mayor was unable to get one council member, Ms. Shipsky, to agree to that at that time. I thought it was unfortunate at the time. I thought that what it did was delay and ultimately, in a super way, delay what we were able to do with our infrastructure. But it may have been as much a failure with the mayor as it was with Ms. Shipsky, because in the end, everything was delayed. I didn't consider it a matter of principle. I considered it a question of leadership, a question of working together and coming up with the right outcome to move the city of Long Beach forward, and I didn't think that happened.
Dr. Garcia, 1 minute.
Personally, I think that we did miss an historic opportunity to fix a lot of our aging streets and alleys throughout the city of Long Beach. The reality is that that was an incredible shock for us to really a massive repair of our entire city. It would have been transformational. Personally, I would not have minded paying that tax. But I also respect people's votes for whatever reason they personally believe. I can disagree or agree with someone on the votes they take, but at the end of the day, while I disagree with Jerry's vote, and I think that would have been a positive thing for the city, you have to respect your colleagues' decisions and the decisions that they make for their constituents and for the city. And so I think I would have liked to have gone forward that way, but I understand people make votes for different reasons.
Thank you. I too voted for the infrastructure plan. I thought it was very important to move Long Beach forward and for people all over this city to take pride in the infrastructure. And we know that today we don't all have that pride. It's really broken. So I was disappointed, but I would agree that the mayor's job is to help people reach consensus, to help with collaboration, to develop a vision, to develop a team. And clearly that didn't happen then. And as mayor, I would make sure that that happens, developing a strategic plan that would include infrastructure development. We get very little money from the state for our streets and roads, and the best way to get that money would be to bring business to Long Beach, because more business will mean more services and more infrastructure development.
Had I been on the city council at that time, I also would not have voted for it. I am a property owner, and I don't like the idea that every time somebody needs money that they put a tax on the property owners, because those of us that have rental properties, it's passed on to the renters, and it also, ups the price. I think there are other ways of showing leadership, coming up with money, economic development, coming up with pension reform in order to reduce some of the drain on our general fund. There are other ways to channel money to the infrastructure and to continue the progress that has been made despite of the economic issues.
All right, thank you. I'm already thinking about going off the script a little bit, because I'm very interested to know what Assemblymember Lowenthal and John Shields both said a little bit about how they would attack this problem. But I'm wondering if I could give a minute each to you all just to say what your plan is for improving Long Beach's infrastructure.
We're doing a couple of things. For the very first time in the city of Long Beach, we're actually doing a pavement management program. I don't know if you all know, but the city of Long Beach did not have all the pavement assessed as to what the condition is, what need to be fixed. So it really has to do with the jockeying of the council with the Public Works Department about what streets get fixed. The same thing with sidewalks. I know in my district, I personally walked my entire district and did an inventory of every sidewalk and curb that needs to be replaced. So they have a complete inventory. Now that they know the magnitude, which we didn't know in the city, utilizing the surplus oil money, which is for one-time funds, makes the most sense. And again, in this go-around, I got almost $2 million worth of infrastructure money simply from the oil funds, and we have repaired a massive amount of sidewalks and curbs. So I would continue to do it in that way.
All right, thank you. Mr. Otto?
Well, I agree that you can use one-time monies for certain projects, capital projects, if you will. I'm not in favor of using one-time monies for ongoing projects. And while I do feel that the oil revenues that we receive have been, at least on a regular basis, higher than we anticipated, and you can use some of those funds for infrastructure repairs, I think we need a comprehensive program. I think it ought to be part of our general plan, and we ought to say to our citizens ahead of time, this is what it is we're going to do. I think that City Hall today operates in a condition of a lack of letting people know what it is that they're going to do. And if they would, City Hall would be more transparent, if it would be more open to what the citizens want and involve the citizens more in decision making, I think that we could talk about infrastructure and we can develop a plan that everyone would agree with.
Okay.
Thank you. And I think that when I see a lot of my neighbors here, if you were just to walk around, not just the First District, but throughout the city, there actually is a lot of infrastructure repair and road repair happening. And oftentimes we actually will get residents saying, oh, why, there's too much construction going on. But the construction going on, there's a good thing. We've been able to leverage a lot of the dollars that are out there. We've leveraged some federal dollars, some grants, oil revenue to really begin to rebuild the city. The citywide survey is important. We've done that here in this district as well. We have an opportunity when the RDA properties, and as we sell off properties in the future, we're going to get that money back, substantial amounts of money back. We have the ability to take that money and reinvest it back into major infrastructure projects. And I remind us, for example, of also business corridors like Bixby Knolls and the incredible infrastructure work that's happening up and down Atlantic. That type of infrastructure work we can replicate in other parts of the city. And so we do have a historic opportunity to invest even more in infrastructure, and that's what we'll be doing over the next few years.
Would you like to go into more detail?
Please.
Sure.
It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I lived right up the street at 7th and Cedar for 19 years, and as you know, the Wilmore area is the oldest district in the city.
And so while my friend and former colleague Jerry Shipsky has the largest district, Wilmore has streets and alleys that are the oldest and therefore need a huge amount of repair. So it feels like a lot of what the city has been doing is this sort of seat of your pants approach. We need a stronger public works department. I think we need to up the amount of money that we budget every year for capital projects from 1% up to 3% so that we know the money is there, rather than waiting to get that discretionary money, dividing it up by 9, and having council members make the decision at the last minute.
Thank you. Ms. Shields?
There definitely needs to be a plan, and what is in the works in 2015 and 2016 is that Sacramento is going to take a bigger bite out of our pension, and there's going to be more deficit challenges in the next 2 budgets. So we need to go for pension reform to free up money in order to have a general fund that is not operating in the deficit. We need a plan. We need to not only have economic development and what these other people have talked about, but we really need to deal with our pension liabilities that are more than $1 billion right now.
Okay, thank you. The next question is for Doug Otto. Mr. Otto, you were among 4 Long Beach City College trustees who last year faced a recall effort for your decision to drop 11 instructional trade programs, dropping them after new facilities were constructed for those programs. In this era of increasingly expensive higher education, and as Long Beach continues to struggle with an unemployment rate far above the national and state averages, not to mention the timeless disputes over government frugality and efficiency, this question seems especially relevant. And I'm wondering if you would share with us your philosophy about the purpose and priorities of our community colleges. Do you support its increased use as a vehicle for transitioning students from high schools to 4-year institutions, and de-emphasizing this tradition of training people for jobs that don't require 4-year degrees? And what do you see as the proper balance between those 2 missions?
Actually, those aren't the only two missions of community colleges. Community colleges, by statute, have very broad missions, including the economic development of the local communities in which they operate. And Long Beach City College has an especially good program. It's probably the best in the state in helping the economic development of this area. We are the small business development center and network for all of Los Angeles County, all of Ventura County, and all of Santa Barbara County. And we have satellites in 19 other locations to carry on that work. We sponsor the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program, where we've trained over 600 people to improve their businesses. And we now have $1 million from the Kauffman Fund, which is an entrepreneurial fund. But going directly to your question, Long Beach City College has faced such enormous cuts that we had to make in the last 5 years, that we've had to make some very tough decisions as to whether we can continue all the programs we had. We went through a very elaborate process that was led both by the faculty and by the administration. It went on for over a year. We had presentations by all the programs that we recommended that be cut, and of the 19 that we said these are possible, we wound up cutting 11. We continued one for 1 year at our last meeting last week. We made that a permanent program again, and we did it not because we're trying to cut students out. In fact, of the programs that were eliminated, only 1 was completely eliminated. Every other program, all the classes except 1 are offered still at Long Beach City College. You just can't get a degree in those programs. We have 38 existing career technical education programs at Long Beach City College. We are in the upper quartile in the state for that, and students that want to get career technical education might as well come to Long Beach City College, because we're doing a great job there, and I would be happy to discuss this with anyone after this meeting.
All right. Thank you. Robert Garcia?
I'm going to give you my perspective as an educator and as a teacher. I think what we're doing nowadays in the state of California is we're forcing too many of our students into a college track. And the reality is that we want every student to have the opportunity to go to college if they want. But if they don't want to go to college, they should have the opportunity to learn a trade, learn a technical skill, become a mechanic, fix an airplane, become a nurse technician. These are the opportunities that have to be afforded to as many of our students as possible. And unfortunately, what's happening at a lot of our community colleges is we are only focusing on the students or focusing more on the students than we're trying to get them transferred into the four-year. We should always have that pipeline there, but that's not our priority. We've got to reshift the way we're thinking about education today and moving forward. Certainly what happened, I wasn't there when in that chair, in that seat, when Doug had to make those decisions. They're tough decisions. I certainly wouldn't have done them the same way. I think those programs were important, and I'm hopeful that the board will begin to bring some of those back.
You know, as a former instructor at Long Beach City College, I feel very passionate about the life of students on their campus. I would also say that I was not in Doug's shoes. I was not a trustee at that time. So I can't tell you what the realities of that budget was. But certainly we know that career technical education is critical, that all students don't have to go on one pathway, that they can be on many different pathways. That's why the state legislature came down last year and visited Cabrillo High School and Long Beach City College in order to better understand linked learning. And that linked learning from high school to college campus had a great deal to do with career technical education. So while I wasn't there when that decision was made, I certainly hope in the very near future that we can bring all of those programs back for students.
Excuse me, John.
I run a nonprofit among immigrant peoples not far from here in Wilmore City, and many of the children of these immigrants are not going to go to college. What they can learn is a skill. They learn as apprentices, they get jobs. And one of the ways that we as a city can facilitate that is to make it easy for lower income entrepreneurs to get businesses started. And at the moment, City Hall is a little bit hard to deal with. Some of you would say really hard to deal with. I would like to make it business friendly. And as these businesses start up and as the storefronts are filled up, this will create opportunities for people to learn on the job and to get skills and then go on to other challenges and education and start a business for themselves.
Thank you, and Jerry Shipsky.
The city of Long Beach right now has 11.2% unemployment. 55% of our youth live at or below the poverty level. 23% of our adults live at or below the poverty level. The very last thing we need in the city of Long Beach is to cut out vocational programs that give people the opportunity to have jobs they can support a family on. I was a community college trustee. The purpose of community college is not only adult education, vocational education, lifelong learning, but also the first 2 years of college. One of the things that when looking at the college since I left there is the transfer rate, or the graduation rate, is very low. It's 27% of the student body. Aviation maintenance was cut. I worked with the aviation community. We're trying to get that program back because we have a major airport, a major aviation industry in the area, and they are absolutely puzzled why Long Beach City College would do away with a program that gives people the opportunities to be FAA certified mechanics at a time when we're trying to look at aviation in terms of an economic growth. So I would hope those programs come back. We need them in Long Beach particularly.
Okay, well, thank you. We'll go to our next question. This is for Dr. Robert Garcia, and this concerns transparency. And I noticed on your campaign website, robertgarcia.com, that it says that you led the way to increase government transparency and accountability in Long Beach. And I know from talking to you back when you first ran that was also an emphasis during your first run for city council. In between that run and this run for mayor, you use the same private website, robertgarcia.com, to interact with the public in your role as a government official, instead of using the official website that the City of Long Beach provides for public officials to carry out their governmental duties. You used this website to inform constituents about your policies, accomplishments, goals. You polled them to test support for projects in the pipeline, and they were directed to respond to your personal email address rather than the city official city email address. You said that the official website could not meet your needs. But doing your work as a public official on this private website effectively put you beyond the normal reach of government transparency laws. The email you receive and send, the results of the polls you conduct, they can't be retrieved through a Public Records Act request for oversight or verification. And likewise, there's no way to know what becomes of the email addresses of those who write to you. Other city officials have subsequently used private websites for public business, creating a growing means of avoiding transparency, although at least 2 of them direct their responses to their city email addresses, such as City Auditor Laura Powell, thus making their correspondence available to public record requests. The question is, I just would like you to explain how performing government duties on a private website that's shielded from access, if this indicates in any way how you as Mayor of Long Beach want technology to be applied to issues of access to public information. For 2 minutes.
Only 2 minutes. That's your answer.
It's a mouthful.
Thank you. Well, let me just start by saying that I'm a self-described techie. I believe in the future and the power of technology to reach people. I'm proud of the fact that I reach probably 8,100 people through Facebook, another 6,000 through Twitter, thousands and thousands through my email network, and I'm proud of that. In fact, residents continuously comment on how accessible and how I can communicate with the public. The reality is that the technology system that we have in place for the city is antiquated, it's old, and it does not function in the ways that a private site is able to. And by the way, I can include half the city council, probably the city auditor. There are a lot of people that use sites. I think the Mayor Garcetti of Los Angeles does the same thing. So this is not a unique thing. I will say, however, that I am extremely accessible. I communicate probably just as much through Facebook and through Twitter to my constituents than I do through my city email. And I think that we've got to provide more access to people in the way we communicate with each other. Young people today, they're not sending me an email. They're sending me a tweet sometime at night, and I respond to them instantly. And so we can communicate in new ways now. And I'm proud of the way I communicate with constituents. As far as open government, look, I am a big believer in transparency. I'm one of the 2 co-authors of our open government policy in the city of Long Beach that put city contracts online to the public, that provided email responses for the public can make email responses to the city council. So that's something I've always believed in. Moving forward as mayor, I also believe in open data. And so what I want to do look forward to as mayor is within those first 100 days, open up as much public data to the public as possible. We should put every single piece of information online. And in fact, that would eliminate even the need for public information requests because all the information would be online. Eric Garcetti has done that in the city of Los Angeles, it's been done in New York, it's happening in San Francisco, and the more that we can put that data online, the better it is for transparency. So I'm a big believer in open government.
Thank you for your answer. Assemblymember
It was a very long statement. Was the question about transparency?
It was a long statement. The point I was making is that by shielding, by having a private website that I cannot file a public records request to find out, for example, who is sending emails and who is communicating and what the results, for example, that poll on the downtown market, if those were accurate results or not. Since I can't do that, and since no one can do that, is that the way to run a city? Is technology?
Well, if I could just talk about my experience on the city council. When I joined the city council in 2001, I initiated, my very first action, in fact, was to initiate an ethics review task force. And I asked the city manager, was passed by the council, to review all of the codes of ethics and ethics commissions in California and life-size cities throughout the country. And an ethics review task force, I think you mentioned Doug was one of the people who ultimately was chosen by the council member to serve on that, and I had 12 people serving on that for a year. They came back with very important recommendations relating to transparency. And they were that we should not have any conflicts of interest in government, that we needed to do audits of campaigns, that we needed to have a lobbyist ordinance so we better understood what was going on behind closed doors or in the restaurants. Some of that was done, not all of that was done. I will continue to work on ethics and transparency as mayor.
All right, Ms. Shields.
I am a person of integrity, and I would expect as mayor for my staff and all of those related to the city to be people of integrity. I do think, though, that this is an issue that we need to look at, because as technology changes, as people begin to communicate in different ways, we need to not only upgrade our ability as a city, but we need to look at, what is transparency and how can we better incorporate technology in it. I do believe and agree with the other people up here that we do need to put that information on the website. And I do believe that we as city officials representing the public need for these things to be available. So we need to re-examine this, look at it, figure out ways to do it in the new technology.
Councilmember Shipsky.
Last year, I was honored at the White House as one of 7 in the United States as a champion of change for open government. And it's because I did real open government work since the time I got into the city council. I was the first council person to publish my schedule. I had a blog that I communicated with people. I'm one of these people that Dave's referring to, that if you write to me on a non-city email address, it goes back into the city, because that is the only way it can be a public record. I tried bringing forth the issue of how we can disclose our texts and our emails that are done privately, as they do in the city of San Jose. And unfortunately, my colleague who is sitting here would not even second the motion to have a discussion. So when we talk about my lone votes, it's usually because I'm voting against a tax or I'm trying to open up government. And Thomas Jefferson said that information is the currency of democracy. We have got to open up local government so that everyone knows what is going on in the city of Long Beach, so that people can become more engaged.
Thank you, Ms. Conner.
I want to make sure that I've got the question correct. And my understanding of the question was there any, my understanding of the question is there a problem with referring responses from the public to a personal email site as opposed to a public email site where the information can be gathered, looked at, reviewed, and by the press and citizens? Is that fair? Yes, that's what I'm asking. I think it's an important issue, and it's an important issue because not only does it deny the public information that they could have to find out about their public officials and make decisions about the directions that we're going, but it also allows those who direct private emails to private sources or public emails to private sources to build their own reputations and to gain contacts and to be friended on Facebook and to do other things that basically in some ways exploit the opportunity that's been given to them by being a public official. So Long Beach has a long reputation for not being transparent, for not being especially ethical historically. And I, as mayor, as a first act, would want to draw a line in the sand and say, going forward from here, we're going to be the most ethical city in the state, we're going to be the most effective city in the state, we're going to be the best city in the state by what we do, but not what we aspire to.
All right, the next question is for Assemblymember Lowenthal. This mayoral campaign comes in your 20th consecutive year representing Long Beach in one level of government or another, I guess 3 altogether. 2 terms on the Board of Education, 2 on the City Council, and 3 up in the Assembly. And over that time, it's put you face to face with perhaps the most difficult and enduring grassroots challenges to the people of Long Beach. Consequently, I know many of those people who sent to Sacramento to represent them in the Assembly voiced surprise and some disappointment when you voted to eliminate the Long Beach Redevelopment Agency along with other redevelopment agencies throughout California. You voted at the urging of Governor Brown and with the overwhelming majority of fellow Democrats, but against the urging of what seemed like, to me anyway, the most local officials. So later in 2011, and we voted for SB 470, which permits City Hall statewide to sell their former RDA properties to developers at less than fair market value to encourage redevelopment. But this has been criticized as enabling sweetheart deals without even minimal public process and observation that was offered by RDA system. So this is sort of a past, present, future. First of all, I'd love to know what your rationale was for voting to eliminate redevelopment agencies. How, if it did have advantages for Long Beach, what those were, and whatever the situation is right now, how you go forward and create growth in Long Beach as mayor.
That's a tall order. But let me start out by saying that 2 years ago, the state had a $26 billion deficit. $26 billion. I know you all remember those times. Today, we have a over $1 billion surplus in our last budget. Yes, applause, please. So we have been extremely responsible over these last few years to bring our budget in line. And when you talk about redevelopment, we also returned $31 million because of that to Long Beach this past year. Now I'm looking out and looking at John McGinnis, who's on the Board of Education for Long Beach Unified. So we gave, in this past year, we repaid education over $2 billion from monies that were taken from education because the schools really suffered during this period. You all know that teachers were laid off. It was a real struggle. Class size got bigger. So we had no right to continue a program that was hurting the majority of the community. In terms of the bill that I co-authored on fair reuse value, what that was really for the people on the project area committees who had worked so hard to make decisions about the future of their neighborhoods. And so rather than have a property sell to the first person that comes along that can pay the price, people wanted to continue the design of their neighborhoods that they worked out on the project area committees. So that was a continuation of the plans that were made under redevelopment. I think the future actually is more about infrastructure financing districts, and there'll be a lot of support here at the local level, otherwise it won't work.
Thank you. And John Shields?
I live just a little north of here, where redevelopment was very instrumental in eliminating blight. Just in First District alone, there are 21 neighborhood liquor stores, which means it's very easy for minors to get liquor. The problem now is that the redevelopment land will very soon be up for sale, and we don't see any agency or group or neighborhood organization or somebody that is going to have input as to who buys that land and what they do with it. Because the liquor licenses stay with the property. And I am part of the new CPAC so that we can help give input to the Planning Commission as these things come up, and we have been able to circumvent and stop some of the misunderstanding as to what the future blight would look like. So I am very concerned about what's going to happen with the redevelopment land.
Jerry Shifsky?
I think redevelopment being eliminated without a replacement was wrong, particularly for a city of like Long Beach, who very much depended on that. There's a number of things that are available to spur the economic development of the city. One of the things I would do as mayor is appoint a person who's going to spearhead that effort, because right now we're not doing it. I sit on the LA Economic Development Corporation, and I had to bring to the city council the other day the fact that they would like us, Long Beach, to participate in going after $1.3 billion as a federal designated manufacturing center. Long Beach wasn't going to do anything about it, and I'm hoping the city manager will get the stuff in by March 7th as required. CalPERS, we invest invest $94 million a year. We have $3.1 billion in assets. Do you know CalPERS takes that money and invests back into communities for housing and for jobs, and not one penny has come back to Long Beach. Long Beach needs to step up and ask CalPERS to help get the investment team here in Long Beach and get some of your taxpayer money back that we've been paying out with pensions.
What I was most struck by was Bonnie's mentioning that there was this $26 billion deficit just a few years ago, and that we had to do something. And what the state did was they cut education. And so when they cut education and they cut 20% of Long Beach City College's budget, and then they came to us and said, now balance your budget with 20% less and still serve your students, that's what we did. And I know everybody has said I wasn't in your shoes when you made those decisions, but since you can still take carpentry and welding and interior design and all the technical programs except for aviation maintenance, where we didn't graduate very many students and there weren't very many jobs available, and there were 4 other colleges in the area that did it, and it cost us $900,000 a year. It seemed like a pretty good decision. But it was wrong to eliminate redevelopment the way that it was done, and it was wrong to not stand up for the city of Long Beach, which needed it more than many, many other places because we had such a robust program here in Long Beach.
Real quick, the second part of the question was what we would do for economic development. Was that part of it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, listen, I think Bonnie knows that I disagree with that vote. I think it was a wrong vote to take. I respect they were in a very difficult situation. I would not have cast that vote the same way. It cost us a lot of resources, but we all made tough decisions, and we've all had to make tough decisions on behalf of the longer-term benefit of the state and the city. I do want to, though, talk about economic development in the future, and I really believe that one of the single most important things we can do to support economic development in the city of Long Beach is to restore the shore and bring back the waves to our entire coastline. The reality is that we have the largest piece of unused beachfront in the entire state of California adjacent to a city and a downtown. If we were able to reconfigure portions of the breakwater, bring back, clean the water, restore the ecosystem, we would have an economic boom like we wouldn't imagine. All the retail in downtown would be full. You'd have surfers on Pine Avenue, home values up and down the coast would go up. We'd have hundreds of thousands of people here every summer. We wouldn't have a retail problem. We would completely change our economic profile throughout the city. We're the only downtown by the water between San Diego and San Francisco. We need waves in Long Beach.
Take down or reconfigure the breakwater. What they've said is we're willing to do a study. And I think to say that there's a plan out there and this is going to solve all of our economic problems is a wish and not a plan. Just like saying we're going to become Silicon Valley South, that's a wish. There's not a plan as to how to do that. The likelihood of that is almost non-existent. If you want to see an economic development plan, if you want to see how we can get our ways out of where we are now, go to my website. I have an 11-goal job creation plan that's tested based on good principles, and look at that. But let's not talk pie in the sky stuff. Let's wait for the results of the study and then make the decisions. I'd love to see waves, I'd love to see the water flush, but I'm not saying it's going to happen or can happen until the Army Corps of Engineers and the city finishes that study.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Now, to a question for Jonna Shields. We looked at the most recent reporting of campaign contributions and saw that you have received $6,000 and $1,000 of that is in non-monetary contributions. And I don't think anybody would just say to your face, oh, you don't have a chance in this race, you're taking up valuable time and space that could be used for other candidates. But I see the impact of that in some of the ways that the campaigns are covered. I know, for example, questions that are posed by one newspaper to all the candidates, well, they're just posed to what they consider the leading candidates. And I was wondering what you think about campaign financing, what it takes to run a campaign, and whether just your perspective as being someone who has not raised a lot of money and is not spending a lot of money on a campaign.
It's a fair question. One of the best answers is that I could do a whole lot with not very much. And a lot more has been kicked in this time. I have a very good strategic plan for reaching the voters that I appeal to. And there will be, things come out, there'll be, the typical political stuff. But most of it is that I have been in Long Beach a lot of years. I have a lot of people that know me, and a lot of people that are willing to tell their friends. So it totally has to do with strategy and knowing who you appeal to, and then targeting those people. So I don't think it's necessary to have a huge amount of money. I think it's a matter of getting in there, getting to know people, working with them, selling your plan and saying, it doesn't take a lot of money. The thing about this is that once I become mayor, I can run a city on a lot less money than some other cities spending a lot of money.
For the other candidates, I know that what this money often does, it creates, sometimes creates some disagreements among people, and I know that there's the Friends of Robert Garcia, there's another, I'm suddenly drawing a blank on the name of what those funds are called, but independent expenditure funds. There's been an accusation that Assemblywoman Lowenthal was going to transfer money from her assembly account into her account for running for mayor. And I just wondered, I guess what you consider, is there a better way to run a campaign for municipal office?
Oh, absolutely. Actually, I have two secret weapons. One, I'm number one on the ballot. And two, I'm changing my name to Jerry Shipsky Lowenthal. Because someone asked me the other day, Bonnie, how was I going to do it by marriage? So. Quite seriously, we need campaign finance reform. But I do have to tell you, Long Beach has the strictest finance reform in the state of California, something that Bonnie and I and Alan and others worked many years ago to bring into the city of Long Beach. So we've got very strict limitations about what can be raised. But we also have public financing that very few people know. The city does give matching funds. It's not exactly matching. They will give you $1 for every $2 you raise in the primary if you agree to spending limits. And then in runoff, they will give you equal amounts. So we need that. We need to get Citizens United removed because it is ruining politics locally.
As a lawyer, you know you don't remove Citizens United, you overturn it if possible, and that would be a pretty good idea. But the truth of the matter is, election finance is like that game of whack-a-mole. You hit it over here and it pops up over here. You say you can't raise money outside the term of the office that you're running for, but you can donate the money to some other source and then use that money. And you can get independent expenditures, and that can supplement the money that you couldn't raise on your own. You can get money from other people outside of the area and bring that money in here. If you look at where, I think it's not only important to look at the money, but look at where it comes from. Look at whether they're going to be people that are voters here, whether they're people that live here, whether they're people that have some relationship to the city of Long Beach. And that's important to take into consideration. But the whole game is nuts. I never liked the Citizens United decision. I think that it was wrongly decided. That was bad form for one of the justices to sit there and nod his head when Obama made his speech about it. But it's what we got right now, and it's unfortunate.
Well, first, I agree with the comments before about Citizens United. I think it's caused massive damage. And the reality is, I don't think anybody up here is going to tell you their favorite part of this is raising money, because it's actually, in my opinion, the worst part of it. And while there has, I have found some fundraising success, I do not enjoy it. In a perfect world, this would all be completely financed. We'd all have the same amount of money. It'd be a European system where we'd all get allotted a certain amount of money. But unfortunately, that's not the system that we live in. And it's not the system that's been created for us here in the city or anywhere else, or anywhere, quite frankly, in the country. So I would love to see complete public financing of campaigns. It's not what we have, and so we're all in this money race to raise money and get support so that we can get our message out, which is the important situation that we're all in.
I think we are very fortunate in Long Beach that we do have campaign limits. We have a certain period of time in which we could raise money. The comment that you made a few minutes ago, Dave, about transferring money, I could never transfer money that was illegal. It's $750 maximum that could come from any place, and I think that's important, and that's what I will follow and have followed. But part of what I did when I was on the council was ask for an audit of campaigns. The city attorney took that up, and in fact, monies that were received from the city in public financing had in fact not been reported properly, and the city attorney was able to find that out. So I think it's important that we continue the transparency. We have very little control over independent expenditures. Campaigns should have no knowledge of that independent expenditure.
Okay, yeah.
Good, it's on. One thing I'd like to follow up on is one of my concerns is the conflict of interest in our election system, in that the political action committees of city employee unions by independent expenditures can, in effect, if they're strong enough, pick a candidate, get them into office, and then when the contracts of those employee unions come before the city council, that member that was basically put in by them needs to vote on that contract. And, you know, it sounds like it shouldn't be that way, but I have seen some of the requests to, some of the questionnaires that come out. The person to be considered has to pledge to support the labor, and I see that as a conflict of interest.
The next question, it's about pollution and poor health in West Long Beach. The residents of West Long Beach are surrounded by the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles, the 710 freeway, railroad lines, and major oil refineries. And despite proposals and attempts at mitigation, the residents continue to experience significantly more respiratory problems and higher rates of cancer than the norm for our region. Almost 30% of West Long Beach households have someone who suffers from asthma. The rates among children who live in West Long Beach are the highest in the region, 15% as opposed to 8% in LA County overall. This leads to, studies have shown, connected this to poor performance in school, translating into a lower economic standard of living down the line. And now there are proposals for a big new rail yard, expanding the 710 freeway. My question is, how much longer do you feel we can responsibly leave the people of West Long Beach in this toxic environment while we keep trying but failing to reduce the pollutants? Does anyone have a specific strategy that you can push to solve the problem, and how long will you give them to work? Or should we consider declaring this area uninhabitable and relocating the residents? Wow. Jerry shoots one. Should we consider declaring the area uninhabitable and relocating the residents?
The difficulty in Long Beach, as you just kind of eliminated, is that we have the highest rate of childhood asthma, we have the highest rate of respiratory illnesses, we are seeing a gross increase in cancers, and it's because of the pollutant air that we have, a combination of the port, which yes, we've made progress with the Clean Trucks program, the Green Port policy, but the fact remains that we still have very inexpensive bunker fuel that the Assembly refuses to put a tax on. It's the only transportation fuel that is not taxed. And that is the worst and filthiest fuel, and that burning and the pollutant that's comes to this area. We could use a tax on that. And actually I asked both Assemblywoman Lowenthal and when Alan was in there as well, put a tax on it. Take that money and put it back in the communities to help mitigate One of the things I went to the Port of Long Beach. It was my suggestion when Chris Steinke was here that the port start trying to mitigate some of the impact. And that's why we now have, they've given out $6 million worth of health grants to try at least help the communities. The problem with the rail yard, it cannot be mitigated. BNSF sent me money, I sent it back, and I don't know if everybody did, but I think that's simply hypocritical that we would accept money in a campaign when we've got a community out there struggling for its health. It is a very complex problem. I think we have got to look at the area in terms of a public health epidemic, and we have to figure as a city, how do we respond when we're adding more and more projects over there that are actually ruining the lives, and as you say, making the area almost uninhabitable. When I was with the Teachers Association of Long Beach, I represented the teachers of Cabrillo, of Stevenson, the schools over there, because they couldn't get their kids outside because it is so polluted on bad days. We've got to do better.
I agree that there remain very, very serious health problems on the west side. And I think that it should be our first priority as to how to address those. Answering the second part of your question first, I think if you went to the west side as one of the mayoral candidates suggested earlier this week or last week, and just told everybody to move because it was uninhabitable, you'd have a lot of resistance from those people because it's their home, they've lived there for a long time, there are communities that are there that feel very strongly about it. And quite frankly, it's the economic base. So hold on a second. Do I only have 1 minute to respond to this question?
This was a general question. Why don't you all just take 2 minutes?
So
How would you share 2 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Well, count that last 10 seconds. Never mind. So what it takes to do this is a comprehensive approach. I have been advocating for a white paper for the whole west side, 1st, 7th, 8th, and 9th district, that says how can we approach all the problems that are here and still allow some economic development. Because let's face it, there is a lot of industrial land on the west side, and it's our tax base. And we keep changing our industrial base and our manufacturing base into residences, and those are a net drain on services, and they don't provide us with the tax dollars that we need to be able to operate the way that we want to operate, and that's just a reality that we have to approach. There's a livability plan that is going forward. The port just gave $300,000 to the plus the $225,000 in economic justice that Caltrans gave. So we've got $550,000. The other 25 came from development services to come up with a great plan to make the west side more livable. The social city fabric group has a great program called the Yards that would add over 350 acres of parkland, which would park the west side at virtually the same, not the same size, but at least 10 acres per thousand, which is the national standard. The east side parks at 16 per thousand. It's a great plan. You got to be thinking comprehensive.
Well, to answer the second part of your question, I think if you would go to the west side, people do love living there. They have pride in living in West Long Beach. There are people that have lived their whole lives, so any suggestion or idea that we move people out, I think is crazy. So that certainly is not going to be the case. But moving forward, what we do, I think our single largest challenge in West Long Beach, as we continue to work on the reduction of pollution, is how do we give West Long Beach more access to park space and green space and open space? And here's a few ways. The first is we're in plans right now at looking at the Terminal Island Freeway, which is a freeway just adjacent to West Long Beach, which gets very little truck traffic. There's discussions about turning portions of that or all of that into a greenway or green and open space. That'd be one. Number two, the LA River. The LA River is right now going through an incredible lot of attention. Los Angeles is going through this major river plan of restoration. In Long Beach, we have a river link plan. We need to implement it. We can reclaim the Los Angeles River in a way where we claim it as a green space for recreation purposes, where parts of it could be canoeing. We could access the LA River to the neighborhoods connected to our parks and really reclaim that as a resource, particularly for West Long Beach. So the third thing is I've been leading efforts on adaptively reusing the Shoemaker Bridge. The Shoemaker Bridge right now is a bridge that as you get off the freeway, you go into Long Beach kind of by the 6th Street exit. And as the 710 reconfigures, that piece was going to be demolished and eliminate it. I said instead, why don't we leave the bridge there and turn it into an elevated park over the LA River? So instead, we'd end up with a park much like the High Line in New York. It would be pedestrian friendly, there'd be a bicycle way, you could have vendors, you have this great green open space over the river with educational opportunities for young people, and would connect parts of West Long Beach as well to downtown, while giving West Long Beach more green space.
Let me understand, was this a general question about the pollution?
Yes, about, do you have any plans to solve this, and how long do we really wait? We've been talking about this for a long time.
Yes, we have. Well, you know, I would say that our greatest strength is also our greatest weakness. You've heard that before. You know, the economic engine of the Port of Long Beach is really amazing. 1 in 8 jobs in Long Beach comes from the port. And so we can't cut off our nose to spite our face, but we can make changes. The port has made enormous changes over these last 15 years. Everybody there has changed their business model. But let's talk about what's happening in West Long Beach. The people of West Long Beach need to make decisions about what they want in their neighborhood. When the people said they wanted a school on the west side, Long Beach Unified built Cabrillo High School. That came from the people on the west side. The rail yard poses a real challenge to people. They need to make that decision. No one is going to leave their home. That was probably the worst comment I think any of us have heard as we've gone to these forums, that somebody actually considered having people leave their home. But people have to take control of their environment. When we started hearing about the pollution over close to the port, and by the way, some of you remember when there was an LNG proposal for the Port of Long Beach. My district, the first district, said, we don't want it. And so we ultimately opposed that. And guess what? Today, we have so much natural gas in this country, we can export it. So the people were right. And I know the people will be right about the west side. There's a lot more pollution control that exists today. I don't think that people want trucks traveling next to their homes every single day, 1,000 trucks, 5,000 trucks. So for these reasons and many others, that's why I've been endorsed by the Sierra Club and the League of Conservation Voters, and that's it, I'm done.
Ms. Shields?
This is not just a West Long Beach issue. Those of us that live on this side live in Diesel Alley too. So the solutions are our issues too. We have to continue to work at cutting down pollution, period. And not only through clean fuels and the port using electricity to hook up the ships, the clean trucks, all of these things we need to be more aggressive at enforcing, as well as more green space. But this is not just a west side issue, it's our issue, because pollution doesn't stay on the west side, it doesn't stay right here. It affects the city, it affects all the people. So this is a major issue. Yes, we need to work on the people and work for them right where they live, but it's a total city issue.
Okay, I have another question, and this has to do with the new Civic Center. The current mayor and city council, or the majority of the city council, holding the recently dedicated George McMahon Courthouse as the shining example, and seismic studies as the warning, are moving forward with the idea of tearing down our current Civic Center, which was built in the mid-70s, and rebuilding a new one at a cost of who knows how much. And that's part of the problem. I think not that much has been released about the project for opponents, if they were going to oppose anything, to oppose. But meanwhile, the George McMahon Courthouse was found by the independent California legislative analyst to have basically cost $160 million more than it was supposed to cost, because of costs, I guess, misunderstandings in terms of how much things were supposed to cost, and I guess just unfamiliarity with the P3. But A bigger question, I think, and this is the one I really want to get to, is should a new city hall be built at all? It seems that we're on the cusp of all kinds of new technological ways to communicate. How do we know that just down the line we're going to need a big council chambers, that we're not all going to be able to sit in our own homes and come into the council that way, or pay our parking tickets or our bills? Is this really the time to make a major investment like this when the last 10 years have shown us so much change, and when the costs are so high, and it's the funding mechanism is one that wasn't good for us the last time? Mr. Otto.
We'd achieve far better results in Long Beach if major decisions were handled in a thoughtful, inclusive, and open manner. They're not now. When a project is rushed through with a perception that decisions are forced, the end product is compromised, and that's exactly what's going on with the Civic Center. It may be that health and safety issues will require us to replace the Civic Center at some point, but the studies that the city is urging on us that says it's going to fall down any day now were done in 2005. And it's only in the last year that it's become such an urgent project. In order for the current process is clearly flawed, it's been poorly communicated, the project has not been adequately discussed. I talked to the chief of staff of one of the council people last week, who explained to me in great detail that even though if you bond finance this project, you would save hundreds of millions of dollars because you would pay it off in 10 years, you would not have to be paying rent, if you will, for the building for 25 more years. But we couldn't do that because a bond measure would never pass. And I said, gee, what you mean is that the people don't want it, so you got to figure out a way around it. Is that right? And he didn't know what to say to that. And I think what we need to do is to open up this process, get the community involved. I'd love to see other things considered once we go through the process that we're going through now. For all intents and purposes, many of the major decisions that will limit what we're able to do have already been made, and we will have spent $3 to $4 million on the doing of this. And it will be money that might not even have been needed to be spent, because it doesn't look to me economically like it makes any sense.
Well, I will start and agree that it's definitely been poorly communicated, and that has caused, I understand, a lot of heartburn on the issue. Here's my take on it. I think you first have to start with the idea of the people that are working in the building, and the residents who are coming there every single day for services, and the thousands of people that walk in and out of that building every single day. What we have in the structure, which is a historic structure, is to a lot of people, including myself, I find it interesting architecturally. It is a danger. Multiple engineering studies said that we are in danger of collapse between the 4th and 8th floors. And what are we going to do to solve those structural problems? So this is a civic challenge. What is our solution going to be to create a structure that is safe? We're putting in millions of dollars every single year on upkeep of the current building. So we're in an RFP process right now to look to see if a P3 process is actually going to work and possible. It may be that we may come back and it may say, you know what, the P3 is not going to work. But we need to know if that is an option for us moving forward. And I don't think that the civic core, part of your question is, do we need a city hall or not? I mean, to me, we're talking about a civic center. City hall is a small piece of that. If we're going to imagine and reimagine a space, and we may not create something new, we may adapt and reuse what's there, we may not be able to do a P3. This is a decision that we made over many, many years with a lot of community discussion. If we aren't going to build anything, it does need to be something that is community-oriented, with an incredible, at the center of an incredible park and library and all these other things that I think the community wants. But today, the question in front of us is, will a P3 work through the RFP process? We do not know the answer to that. Have some of the criticisms about the community process and the amount of openness. I would agree that there's been issues there. But I think we got to move forward, we got to get the results, and then move on to see what's next.
Assemblywoman?
The process has gone so fast with so few people and so little input. We need to slow down and make sure every council district has representatives that weigh in, and that hasn't happened so far. Another thing that I would say is, my concern is, public-private partnerships don't necessarily work, and there are not good models from around the country, even around the world, for the mayor and the council to look at. I don't think there's been enough research to say whether this is the best financing model if there was to be a new city hall. But I would agree that the most important thing that we want to create in some form is a civic center. Wherever it's located, we need a civic center. We need a center of the community for our government, for our library, for the arts, for performances, for restaurants, a place that everybody can go to, everyone is proud of, and we need to figure out exactly how we're going to finance it. And I'm not convinced that a public-private partnership is the only way to do it. I think that property there is so valuable. I want to make sure that the city of Long Beach doesn't give away property to a developer who would then make a lot of money on an investment when the city could be reaping that money. So let's slow up and take a good look and make sure that the new mayor and the 5 new members of the council in mid-July will have a say in what happens.
Thank you. Ms. Shields?
I agree. It looks like this is a mayor's idea, and some city council people are going along with it. The question on my mind is, why is he pushing? Who is getting paid off? Who is going to get the sweet deal? What's going on here? There is something we can do about it, besides griping, and that is to go on the website, longbeach.gov, find the mayor's phone number, call his office, find the contact page, and send an email. There is something we can do to say, we're not supporting this. We want to slow it down. We don't want sweet deals, and then the next mayor and city council has to figure out how to pay for it. So get on the website, call up the office, and be a taxpayer that speaks up.
I want to thank my warm-up acts over here, because I'm the only council person that stood up and said no. That pesky little 1-no vote. And the reason was, for the very reasons you're hearing right now, the cacophony of, oh my gosh, it's railroaded through. Absolutely. The building is 37 years old, folks. It took until in fact, the city never even talked to the architect who lives in the city of Long Beach, and it took the newspaper to talk to him. And the fact remains is we're paying $1.5 million or so to get a consultant to do an RFP. The RFP went out today. The city council didn't get to see it. We got to see it when it went online. We had no input as a result of you going to any public meetings that you wanted certain things. That's number one. Number two, we're then going to have to pay $1.5 million for every one of the companies that respond in that RFP, whether or not we choose to select them, because that little sweetheart deal was written in when the RFQ was written. It's fiscally irresponsible. We didn't do a retrofit RFP. We have not thoroughly investigated. And by the way, if this is so seismically unsafe, this was written in 2005, this is 2014, it's going to take 4 years to build. And when I asked the city manager that in council, they said, well, we're just taking a calculated risk that nothing's going to happen. Look, if you've got life and limb and threat, get them out. Get them relocated right now. So I don't believe it. Something smells fishy. I think it was railroaded because it was campaign season. It opened up the political trough for contributions, and it's going to hand a new council a very large decision that they have to overturn because it's not going to be feasible. And by the way, the financing, it even says in the RFQ, we're going to have to go to the legislature and get state legislation to approve us doing that kind of financing deal. It It doesn't cost that kind of money to know whether or not we can do these things. We should have gone the fiscally responsible way, found out how much to retrofit. Every city in the state of California has retrofitted their civic centers. As to moving, yes, the port just bought a building's totally refurbishing. They can, when they're done using it as a temporary headquarters, the city of Long Beach needs to look at that in terms of maybe that's where we need to be located, a more centralized location, and really, for God's sakes, clean up and maintain what we have right now until we do something.
Were you signaling to me that you had something to say, or not?
There's a couple of things that were factually incorrect, but I think in the end, we all agree that we're beyond the time.
Okay. Well, then we'll just have 1 minute summaries. Do you want to begin?
As you may know by now, my name is Doug Otto. I'm running for mayor of Long Beach. I'm a lifelong resident of Long Beach. I've raised 5 kids here. They all have jobs with benefits and don't live at home, with the exception of my daughter, who's here tonight, who is a senior at Berkeley and who decided to take the semester off to help in this campaign. We have 5 grandkids, and I tell people that I'm not a politician. I'm an attorney. I don't want to go to Sacramento. I don't want to go to Washington. But for 30 years, I've been doing the work that Dave told you about when he read my biography at the beginning. I want to keep doing that because I have a question, and that's, what are we going to leave our kids? What are we going to leave our grandkids here in Long Beach? What's the future? Given where we are right now, what is it that we're going to be able to do? I've got a good plan because the Navy's not coming back, Boeing's not coming back. We have to be smart. We have to have a great economic development plan. And if you look at that plan on my website, you'll see that I've got a vision for the future, and I can take you there. Vote for Doug Otto.
Take 1 minute to summarize.
Well, thank you all for coming tonight. I'm Robert Garcia, Vice Mayor of Long Beach, and I'm asking for your vote in the upcoming election. I was born in Lima, Peru. I came to the U.S. when I was 5 years old. And I grew up in a very typical immigrant experience. A lot of us living in a small apartment, not a lot of money, not a lot of support or resources. But my family had to believe that America would provide hope and a better life for all of us. We believed that the next day would be better than the current day. And that's what, that spirit of my mother and my grandmother is what's made me into an optimist who believe that Long Beach's best days are ahead of us. I'm fortunate to have lived in this city for 20 years. I love Long Beach. I'm running because I believe that our city is a great place, a diverse place, a place that supports anyone, no matter the color of your skin, your income level, who you love, where you live. This is a great city, and I believe that we can, together, even build an even greater city. We can take the next step. Long Beach has more people in population than Atlanta, Georgia. But we got to believe in ourselves as a great city. We are the international epicenter. We're on the Pacific Rim. We have this incredible collection of neighborhoods all over the city, and we can make a better Long Beach together. Thank you.
I want to thank the Yes We Can Club for having this really important forum tonight. You know, Long Beach has been my home for the last 44 years. I raised my kids here. I've had the honor of representing every level of government here, and I'm passionate about Long Beach. Throughout this journey, I've had the opportunity to make relationships at all levels. Some of you are here this evening that I've known for all these years. As mayor, I'll cut red tape. I'll make it easier for small business to locate here, to hire more workers and larger businesses to relocate here. I'll give our police and firefighters the tools that they need to keep our neighborhoods safe, and I'll restore funding to finally get our streets and sidewalks fixed. I'm proud to be the official candidate of the Democratic Party and endorsed by Dolores Huerta, Speaker John Perez, Controller John Chung, Emily's List, Federation of Labor and the Sierra Club, and local Democratic and community leaders. I humbly ask for your support.
I believe that a critical component to restore funding and to grow us as a city is pension reform. The pension reform that has happened is baby steps. The mayor and city council gave 15% pay raise to all city employees and then took back 6%. Now that was pension reform, but it's taking money out of one pocket, putting it in the other. We need to go further. We need to adjust some of the high benefits that some pensioners are getting. In order to bring things in line, we also need to develop our economics. And one of the critical things is that City Hall become business friendly. Because at the moment when somebody goes down to deal with City Hall, they often are not greeted with, "How can I help you?" And in order to balance these two and provide pensions for our future, for our city employees, we need to not only deal with pension reform, but also change the red tape into red carpet for our businesses in this city.
Hello, Dave and the club and all of you for coming tonight. This is what democracy is about. This is what makes it exciting for those of us who are trying to get the word out about the issues that are so important to most of us. I was born here in Long Beach. Actually, my parents met at the Pike. We lived on the west side. My roots are very deep in the city of Long Beach. I've spent my entire adult life working to make Long Beach a better place to live and to work. I ask for your vote on April the 8th so that I can continue doing the work to make our city safe, our neighborhoods safe, to make sure that we have jobs that you can raise a family on, and that we're open and transparent as a government, and that our services are accessible and accountable to the taxpayers. You can check my website. I've got page after page of accomplishments that I think I can put forward in the city of Long Beach, that together we can make this city better. I'm convinced of it. Yes, we can. Please vote on April the 8th.
Response to the questions. Thank you to the audience for your attentiveness. And I guess I'll turn it back over to Chris and Mayoral. Thank you.
I'd also like a special applause for our moderator, Dave. Thank you so very much for coming tonight. We are very, very pleased that you are here, and we hope you have more information that will enable you to make a good decision when you go to the polls on the 8th of April. Just remember that in order to vote in this election, I know it probably sounds like I'm preaching to the choir, but we always find we have to remind people that you do have to be registered, and that if you have moved between now and the last election, you do have to re-register. If you have any questions about your status, you can ask at the table on the way out, because that is one of the things that we do in the Yes We Can Club. Thank you very much for coming. Chris?
Yes, thank you once again for attending the debate. And as I stated earlier, any contributions you can make to the club are more than welcome. You make your checks payable to Yes We Can Democratic Club or YWCDC. And also, go ahead and visit our webpage. It's ywcdc.com. And check us out, see our upcoming calendar events. Our monthly meetings are every first Thursday of the month at our president's home, Chris Robeson, 618 Ohio Avenue over in Rose Parks. And a round of applause for the Yes We Can Club Mayoral Debate Committee. But as I said, thank you so very much, and to the candidates once again. You realize our future mayor is sitting up there at this point. And please be getting your car out of the parking garage. It closes at 10:30. And we'll see you at the polls on April 8th. Go Beach.